You guys agree with me in general that we put way too much value in emotion? That to me is the overall storyline that has run into the coronavirus in general. That's kind of the linchpin that I would say connects all of this, and also just the country in general. Everything is emotion all the time. And I keep waiting for adults to take a step back and say, let's just try to be logical. Like, instead of screaming at each other, instead of being angry on social media all day long, every day. Danny G, do you get that sense? I mean, look, First Amendment's alive and well on the show, but I see sports writers buying into the emotion all the time. And it happened again yesterday with the Miami Marlins, where everybody's like, oh, my God, you're going to have to cancel the season. This is why you can't play sports. Like, what in the world are we doing? Why are we leaving our houses? What are we doing? You know, it's like even with Texas and Florida and California and Arizona, people aren't looking at the data and realizing that even if we have a surge in cases, it is now a fraction as deadly as long as we don't follow the lead of New York and the other states back in March and April that followed New York's lead. Like, this virus is very manageable. It has almost no effect on the vast majority of people who get it. And are there going to be some ill effects? Yes, but the same thing happens with all sorts of viruses all over the country. Most people who get pneumonia end up fine. Most people who get colds end up fine. Most people who get the flu end up fine. But a small minority of people who get those viruses die every year. And yet we continue with our lives. And I think the same thing has to be true with the coronavirus. I hope we get a vaccine, and I hope that vaccine works perfectly. But in the meantime, we just can't stop living life, sports included.
Yeah, I took a nap in the morning, and when I woke up, it was a landslide of emotions. It was like Armageddon of people's feelings on Facebook, especially in Instagram. There were tons of attachments of the Marlins outbreak story with people commenting to the attachment saying, well, that's it, season's over.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on?
Doesn't it feel like people were actually rooting for the season to be over?
Yeah, 100%. That's the first thing I thought. And when I actually read the article, which most of these people did not do, they just saw the headline and then put their fear and their feelings attached to it. I read the article, and I'm glad Manfred came out with such strong statements about how we knew this was going to happen. It still has only been a 0.4 positivity rate.
99.6% of all the tests that Major League Baseball has run have been negative.
Yeah. And then I go to your Twitter account, and you and Ravel have
I was
lit
trending.
up.
I don't know how high I got on the national, trending news. But I on my phone, like everybody, I think everybody sees different trending news stories based on what they choose.
Yeah.
I'm not, I think there's a one trend. Anyway, I got up all the way on my own phone. It's always funny, I think. And I talked about this a little bit with Ben Shapiro. But when you get your phone and, like, I'll go in and see what's trending because I'll be like, hey, am I missing anything? I want to make sure that I'm, on top of whatever stories are out there. And when I went into my phone, it's always interesting to see your own self trending, right? I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm trending now. And I went all the way up to national trends, the number 2 trend in America. And I was like, Clay Travis is trending number 2 in America right now. And, well, that's probably not bad for me, right? I mean, like, all publicity is good publicity, especially on the day my television show comes back. But I was thinking, like, how wild is it that I'm trending as a sports person, for arguing that sports are going to be fine and we need to play them? Like, that's how crazy the world is. Like, usually when somebody's trending, it's like they've done something really crazy, right? Like, what did somebody say now? Either they died or they said something crazy. That's typically what happens when trending topics are out there. What I said was, hey, the data supports that we need to keep playing Major League Baseball, and was, all sports in general need to come back. It's such a rare opinion in my industry for somebody to say that I was the number 2 trending topic in America for saying, hey, if you look at the data, sports need to be played.
In Ravel's tweet, he said, I'm not rooting for this, but, and that, yeah. I love when people type that, because when they say, I'm not rooting for this, chances are they're rooting for that. That's the way it came off.
The easy way, and I think, and I'm going to open up phones because I'd like to hear from you guys. Do you feel like sports media people are rooting for sports to get canceled. The easiest way, and all the sports media people are, of course, like, oh, no, I would never do that. But the easiest thing is, yesterday, the NHL announced that they didn't have a single positive. And I believe MLS said it as well. And that was not attention. Nobody cared. Almost no retweets. Almost no people paying attention to it. You just heard Rob Manfred on this show in the first hour say 99.6% of all people they are testing in Major League Baseball are negative. Yet the sports media, the minute anybody tests positive, these members of the sports media who claim they're not rooting against sports, they immediately share whatever the negative story is. And I've been straightforward. I've been saying, look, there's lots of reason for positivity since April 21st. All of the trend lines have been good. Doesn't mean there hasn't been blips. Doesn't mean everything has gone perfectly. But the overall death rate is a fraction of what it was on April 21st, which is when deaths in this country with the coronavirus. Because remember, there's a difference between dying of the coronavirus and dying with the coronavirus. Deaths in this country have been trending down. And how many people in sports media have you heard that from? Dub, do you get the sense that members of the sports media, many of them, are rooting against the return of sports?
I do, and I don't really understand why people are ripping Rob Manfred for saying that this is not a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want him to do, freak out and panic?
Yes, that's exactly what they want him to do.
Well, it's like these people, they want people that are in leadership positions to
validate their emotions.
Well,
they want them to validate the emotion
exactly.
by freaking out, which is the exact opposite to me of what you actually want a leader to do. Like imagine what I always say, if you are in the hospital and the doctor comes in the room and he read your emotion and he responded with more emotion, how much more scared would you be? Right? A doctor comes in and he's like, well, I've looked at your results. And then he says, and oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before. This is the most terrifying thing that I've ever seen in my life. You would be like, oh my God, I'm finished. Like, the way to respond to emotion is not with more emotion. It's hard to out-emote someone. You can say, hey, I understand your fear. I understand that your emotion is real. But emotions are often not rooted in factual reality. And the analogy that I keep using all the time in the world that we're in is in the summer, I'm always a little bit fearful when I go into the ocean. But I understand that it is not a real fear of sharks because the odds are so low. But if every time you went in the ocean, if there was some guy running around screaming, shark, 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 like, you would be like, I don't want to get in the water. And you'd also be like, who's that jerk out there who's screaming shark like every minute out in the water? That's what we have right now on social media. People screaming shark all the time. Dub, I'll let you finish, but I wanted to dive in there because mirroring emotion is not a good thing. Not for adults, I don't think.
No, you're exactly right. And Rob Manfred even said this. I mean, the chances of this happening at least one time this season is 100%.
That's
right.
I
mean, these guys are flying all over the country. The likelihood of a team having a small outbreak is 100%. And let's be honest, if these 14 Marlins players, they just didn't say anything and they didn't even show up on the field, would anyone even notice? That's just a cheap shot at the Marlins, though.
Yeah, right. What about you, Eddie? Like, do you feel like in your feed there are many members of the sports media who are rooting for sports not to come back?
Well, I mean, look, we all to an extent like to say I told you so on occasion, but it seems like those people really love telling you I told you so. And I mean,
even when it's something everybody knew. Like, did anybody think that Major League Baseball was going to go a whole season without anybody testing positive?
This has already been talked about. Adam Silver has even said we're going to have positive tests. And we've heard countless times saying it's not going to shut down the season.
Right.
So what's the news here? I don't understand it. We saw in MLS they have 2 teams that got shut down
Yeah.
in their tournament, and I didn't hear anyone screaming, "We've got to stop the
they were.
MLS tournament."
They
were.
were.
They
just
were?
that most people don't care about the MLS,
I
so
guess
it wasn't
that's
as
true.
noticeable as Major League Baseball. But yes, there were the people out there who said we've got to shut
and
this
that
down.
tournament has continued on, and
Yes.
as far as I know, we haven't seen any other teams drop out after that initial, group of positive tests. So I get it's baseball and it's bigger and it
Only
gets your
sport
attention.
Going on, team sport,
Yeah,
really.
it gets
that
your
people care about.
attention, but I don't think that this is shocking news.
All right.